So let's add a little bit more details to this salinity of ocean water. What is all in the ocean that we call salinity? So we looked at selected dissolved materials in 35 parts per thousand seawater. So what adds up to 35 parts per thousand? So we said chloride, sodium, sulfate, magnesium, calcium, and potassium. So the ratio of those is 55 in terms of percentages, 55, 30.61, and so on and so forth. So measuring salinity tends to also use a method called constant proportions, which means anywhere in the world, if you take a sample of ocean water, this tends to be the proportion in which these different constituents occur. So if you want to measure salinity, then you can take a sample and measure the amount of chloride and use these ratios to figure out the amount of other substances like sodium, sulfate, magnesium, and so on. There are also minor constituents in parts per million by weight. So this is parts per thousand. This is parts per million. So we are getting into trace amounts. When we look at carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and methane and nitrous oxide and so on, we'll come to these trace amounts again. So the minor constituents include carbon dioxide, nitrogen, and oxygen. So carbon dioxide in the ocean is only 90 ppm. In nitrogen is 14 and oxygen is 6. Okay, but the story is not complete because carbon dioxide in the ocean, we'll see later on, is present in many forms. So even though it's 90 ppm, which looks like it's much less than the more than 400 ppm we have in the atmosphere, actually ocean is not so limited by carbon dioxide. On the other hand, atmosphere has so much of nitrogen, almost 70 some percent, 79%, but in the ocean it is a trace element, and nitrogen and its forms like nitrate are important nutrients for various species of phytoplankton and other things that live in the ocean. So it's a valuable constituent of ocean water. Oxygen, which is 20% in the atmosphere, on average is only 6 ppm in the ocean water. So again, small. So remember, it's ppm. If I said percentage, remember these are ppm. So nutrients like silicon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and iron. When we do marine biology, we'll look at these. Just like human body requires all the vitamins, zinc, iron, copper, etc., things that live in the ocean also need all these nutrients, right? The other constituents include bromide, carbon, strontium, boron, and so on. Everything has a role to play. Everything is used in some sense by either things living in there, or when we try to estimate various things from using ocean sediments, which we'll discuss a little bit later on. Okay, so trace constituents in parts per billion by weight, so that's a really tiny amount, are things like lithium, rubidium, iodine, zinc, aluminum, manganese, lead, mercury, and gold. Okay, so these are the various things, constituents that make up what we call salinity of the ocean. It's not just NaCl, it is all these things. So let's close that little session there. And